Hey YouTube, Joyboy here. So today I have a fun video for y'all, and in this video I'm going to discuss 5 moments in One Piece that were too brutal or too graphic to show in the anime in their original forms. Now in general, Toei and Funimation do a really good job of adapting One Piece, the manga, into the anime, and they usually don't skip over a lot of things. But there's certain scenes that I believe we can really go to no other conclusion than they were just too brutal to actually show. And so there's not a lot of these moments, but there is 5 that I want to talk about. And so let's begin. So, number 5. Now guys, I actually started watching the anime of One Piece before I read the manga for a very long time. I believe that I watched all the way up until the Impel Down arc before I actually switched over to the manga, and I absolutely had to find out what happened next. But for all of this time, Monkey D. Luffy had a scar underneath his eye, and for the longest time I just assumed that we would get to know more about this scar, that it had some sort of importance to the story in some way. But as time went on, the scar was there and there was no explanation for it until you switched over to the manga and read chapter 1. In chapter 1, it is revealed that Luffy actually stabbed himself underneath the eye to prove to Shanks that he was ready to become a pirate. This scene from chapter 1 never made it into episode 1, however, or whatever episode was made in regards to the original chapter of One Piece. It may not necessarily have been episode 1. And so, as many of you will know, this was later corrected in the One Piece special episode of Luffy, where they actually reanimated some of the original arcs and stories with all of the original Straw Hats. And in this episode of Luffy, they actually did end up showing Luffy stabbing himself underneath his eye, as he did in the manga. But I'm not really counting that because a lot of people who start watching One Piece from the anime are not going to start off with the special episodes of One Piece. They would start off with the original episodes. And in the original episodes, it does not explain how Luffy got his scar, and I can only assume it was because it was too brutal to show at the time. So now let's talk about number 4. And number 4 has to do with Bartolomeo. And so, as a lot of people will know if they follow One Piece, Bartolomeo is one part super fanboy. But the other part of his character is really interesting as well, which is Bartolomeo can be a dick to those who aren't the Straw Hats. And then not only that, but he can become even more brutal if you in fact in some way disrespect the Straw Hats. And that is exactly what happened in this scene, which was not shown in the anime. And so a random fodder was talking trash about the Straw Hats, specifically Luffy not being able to save his brother Ace. Bartolomeo overheard him, which was, all things considered, very unfortunate for this dude, and then immediately pinned him up against the wall with his barrier, grabbed his tongue and pulled it outside of his mouth, and then it's very clear what he did next. He took a knife and he cut that dude's tongue off. Absolutely brutal. And if you are curious, this is the next scene that is shown with Bartolomeo after he cuts this dude's tongue off. Yep, doesn't care. Moral of the story, do not mess with Bartolomeo. So now let's get into number 3. So number 3 has to do with the character Bellamy. And so as the story has progressed, you will know that Bellamy has gone from initially just cold-hearted, pure evil villain all the way up until now where he's pretty much a friend of the Straw Hats. But when we first met Bellamy, he was not like this. And so in the very first scene in which we see him playing a game of cards with a random pirate. This is pretty much the end point where the anime differed from the manga. The anime took this scene and changed it completely because it was way too brutal. But yeah guys, so Bellamy accuses this dude of cheating. And so in response to that, he stabbed him right in the hand. But he's not done. After this, he ends up twisting the knife while it's still stabbed in his hand. Oh yeah, and he shot him as well. and then afterwards smash a bottle of liquor on his head. And then his buddy Sarkis comes in here and throws a match on this alcohol-soaked dude, and then they kick him out of the window. Damn. I'm pretty sure he's dead. So yeah guys, if you're comparing this scene to the anime, most of those events did not happen. Bellamy grabbed his hand instead of stabbed his hand. There's no smashing a bottle over his head. He does shoot him and knock him out of the window, but it's clear from the scene that he's still alive and he ends up landing on a carriage or something like that. And so, I guess the anime producers decided this scene, although very pirate-like, was just too much for One Piece anime watchers. So now let's get into number 2. Honestly, I probably believe that this is the most famous brutal scene from the manga that was never transitioned into the anime. But for those of you who don't know, this has to do with Whitebeard. And so right after Ace died, Whitebeard went into a rage and started attacking Akainu and did some pretty serious damage to him. But while he was attacking him, he let his guard down and allowed Akainu to strike him back. And when Akainu did this, he took half of Whitebeard's face with him. Yep, half of Whitebeard's face. But you know guys, Whitebeard took it like a champ. I mean, you know, certainly half of his face might have been important, might have taken a bit of his brain with him, but, you know, he did survive for about 5 more chapters after that, so, you know, maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. I honestly think the brutal scale kind of broke with this incident, and it would be very easy to put this scene as number 1. However, I do think that there is one scene that was not shown in the anime that was more brutal. So let's talk about it. Let's go into number 1. So do you guys remember Sanji's backstory with owner Zeph? So that was a very sad backstory. And, you know, obviously in the recent chapters, spoiler alert, in the recent chapters, we have gotten a little bit more added to his backstory. However, the whole scene with Sanji and Zeph starving on the island was pretty powerful by itself. But I honestly think the manga made this scene even more powerful by the explicit reveal of what happened to Zeph and his leg. So in the anime, Zeph ended up saving Sanji from drowning, and so as he was doing this, his leg was caught in, you know, in something that was going on with the shipwreck, and so in order to save Sanji and then, you know, end up saving himself as well, he ended up cutting off his leg, it's presumed, and then of course saving Sanji and then taking them to this deserted island where they starved for some time. But guys, that is not what happened to Zeph's leg. No sir. So as far as his leg getting trapped in the shipwreck and then he had to cut it off underwater, nope. He actually took a rock while they were on the island and getting prepared to starve themselves for some time until they were saved. He took a rock and smashed his leg. Next time we see him, his leg is completely severed and not attached to his body. And then Sanji asks him, thinks that he has more food, but it ends up being his treasure that is in the sack and not food. And he wonders what Zeph has been eating for, the last week that they've been starving. And then he noticed Zeph's missing leg and he asks him, "Did you eat your own leg?" To which Zeph responds with, "Yes." Zeph chopped off his leg with a boulder and ate it. Holy shit. Like, seriously, dude, fuck. I don't even know what to say. Like, the Whitebeard thing was bad, but to actually chop off your own leg and eat it, I don't know, man. I don't know. That just seems worse to me. So I think it's pretty clear why the anime didn't choose to animate this scene as it appeared in the manga. But yeah, guys, this was my top 5 moments of scenes that were too brutal to show in the anime, or that were shown in one form in the manga, but in the anime they appeared different, and we can only assume it was because they were so brutal. But there's always the possibility that I missed something. There's a lot of chapters in One Piece, and a lot of episodes of anime to watch. So let me know if you know of a scene that you think would be just as brutal or more brutal than any of the 5 scenes that I mentioned in this video, so let me know. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. Like the video if you liked the video. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. And as always, dudes, have a wonderful day.